Welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored, live from New York City. Well, British Iraqi rapper and pro-Palestine activist Kareem Dennis, better known as Lowkey, has been a powerful and influential pro-Palestinian voice before and during this conflict. The official version of his track Terrorist was taken off YouTube after the Hamas attacks on October the 7th, 14 years after its initial release. He's been highly critical of what he says is media bias and accused me of taking a pro-Israel slant on this show. Well, I'm joined now by Lowkey, who's at our London studio. Lowkey, thank you very, very much indeed for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Piers.
I mean, on the issue of whether I'm pro-Israel, I don't have a horse in this race or this war. I try and be balanced. I try and have all kinds of views. I think we've had more pro-Palestinian people on this show in the last 2 weeks than any other news show in the world, and they've been getting huge audiences. So I would take issue with that charge that somehow I'm slanted one way or another. I think this whole thing is a complete tragedy. I know that you've been committed to the plight of the Palestinians for a long time, going back at least 15 years from what I can see in terms of you travelling to Gaza. What was your reaction when you first heard about these attacks on October the 7th?
Well, let's be clear. Reading the testimony of survivors of October 7th from Kibbutz Be'eri, like Yasmin Porat, was extremely harrowing. What she alleges is not only that her husband was killed in the initial takeover, but also she then says that the Israeli military tanks fired on the room where the hostages were, killing 12 Israeli civilian captives. We have also seen fantastic work in the Haaretz newspaper by Amos Harel, where he speaks at length about Brigadier General Rosenfeld, who was in charge of the Haaretz crossing. Now, when this military base was taken over, what he says, Amos Harel in Haaretz, the well-known Israeli newspaper, he says that Rosenfeld, when he realized that the base was overtaken, called in an airstrike. This is in Haaretz. These are not my words. These are the words of Amos Harel. What we then saw is, since October the 7th, 22 Israeli civilian detainees killed in Gaza by Israeli airstrikes. The Israeli military has something called the Hannibal Directive. The Hannibal Directive was developed in Lebanon in the 80s by the Israelis with the clear understanding that they do not want the other side to take hostages. So, for example, you have the case of Hada Golding in 2014, what Israel called Operation Protective Edge, which killed over 2,200 Palestinians. But when this Israeli soldier was taken captive by the Palestinians, Israel then proceeded to kill everyone, including the civilians in the area around where he was kept and the soldier himself. So what Israel has, unfortunately, is a policy of killing captives. If you look at the case of Gilad Shalit, this was an Israeli soldier.
All right, listen,
allow me to finish. Allow me to finish.
Well, yeah,
and don't
you
interrupt
can't just
me.
keep talking. You can't keep talking.
No, I have one last point to make, and I hope that you'll allow me to make it. In the case of Gilad Shalit, what happened was one Israeli soldier led to 1,000 Palestinian prisoners being released. There is a clear understanding within the Israeli military and political elite that they do not want people to be kidnapped. So therefore, they unfortunately, as history has shown us and as the directive within the Israeli military shows, they take action to kill their own captives that have been taken by the other side.
Right, let me respond to you. You tweeted on October the 7th, the arrogance to believe you could keep 2 million trapped in an open-air prison indefinitely, ... That appears to have been your only comment about what happened. So just for the record, do you condemn what Hamas did that day?
I condemn the genocidal conditions which have created this violence. Every heartbeat, every human heartbeat is sacred to me. And that is what has compelled me to work as I have for the last 15 years to save lives, and stop people dying, Piers.
But that wasn't my question.
No, we do not have a clear picture of what happened on October 7th because, unfortunately, too much of the media has relied on the Israeli military talking points which are given directly to them. Until neutral observers, observers are able to establish the facts of October 7th, I will not allow the talking points of the Israeli military to become dominant of what happened on that day. Palestinians are subject to a genocidal war. Collective punishment in Gaza is real.
Let me respond. You are the only pro-Palestinian person I've had on the show in 2 weeks who has tried to make out that this just didn't happen on October the 7th, or somehow was perpetrated by Israelis.
You are misrepresenting what I am saying.
Well, I've got 2 questions. They're very straightforward. Do you believe that 1,500 people were slaughtered, including 260 people at a music festival? You're a musician. And secondly, do you condemn the people who did it? They're not difficult
Piers,
questions.
I would like to quote something that you just said to the former spokesperson for the IDF. This was your exact sentence not long ago. You said, it's difficult to tell between combatants and non-combatants. So the implication of what you said was somehow it was understandable that Israel has killed a Palestinian child every 15 minutes in Gaza.
I didn't say that.
For the last, no, but somehow they couldn't tell that those children were not combatants, according to you.
No, I didn't say that.
It's understandable.
I didn't say that, and I have said that it is absolutely appalling, the number of children who are dying in Gaza. It's appalling, and it will get worse. I make no bones about that at all.
And I have to say,
you have to start. You have to start surely from a humanity point of view. I can absolutely express my horror at the deaths of Palestinian innocent civilians, as I have done many times over the years. I think it's horrifying. And I think this is why I have a serious problem with the proposed ground invasion, because I think it will create unbelievably large numbers of civilian casualties, and I'm not sure that the strategy will work. But I'm just curious why you, who is, I know you care about people, I know you care passionately about the Palestinian civilians, but you're the only pro-Palestine voice I've had who's even tried to suggest that what Hamas did on October the 7th was not as bad as we think. So is that what you think?
What do we think? But what do we think, Piers? The information is not clear. As I've said to you, all human life is sacred.
Hamas haven't even tried to hide it.
It's sacred. But I'm not trying to hide anything. You're trying to hide something.
No, with respect, with respect, you are definitely trying to dissemble here, and I'll explain why. I've given you an opportunity to simply say whether you condemn what Hamas did, which, by the way, they have brazenly boasted about. They posted videos celebrating what they did. There is no doubt about what Hamas did. They want you to know what they did. They want me to know that. They want the world to know. They killed Jewish people in the main and in Israel with impunity. 260 people at a music festival. Babies, grandmothers, they kidnapped 200 people. God knows what's happened to them. Now, you can shake your head, but what you can't do is deny that that happened, because Hamas have admitted it brazenly and with great pride.
Stated,
and secondly, if they've admitted it, do you condemn what they did?
I absolutely mourn the loss of all human life in this conflict, and I have struggled for 15 years of my life in a way that, Piers, to be honest, you haven't, okay? And I take you as an empathetic person with a high level of emotional intelligence, okay? I have struggled for 15 years of my life to stop the killing, for a ceasefire now, to stop deaths. But I have to say, Piers, that actually this line of questioning, unfortunately, on a personal level, is somewhat hypocritical, and I'll explain why. On April 18th, 2022, you said the exact phrase that you feel like Nelson Mandela walking out of prison on the long road to freedom of speech. Today, there is a statue for Nelson Mandela outside Parliament. Now, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, Beit Salim, and even the Harvard Law School have said that Israel practices apartheid against the Palestinian people. Do you know what the ANC struggle against apartheid entailed? Are you aware that the ANC are believed to have very unfortunately, horrifically, and terribly taken the lives of children and civilians in their struggle against apartheid? So, Piers, you seem absolutely content to not only compare yourself to Nelson Mandela, who served 27 years in jail for what they described as terrorism at the time, but yet you cannot see what the vast majority of human rights organizations in the world see when they look at the Palestinians. When you look at UN Resolution 194, paragraph 11, the Palestinians have the right to return home. Almost a million of them were displaced in 1948 with the foundation of the State of Israel. And what we are now on the brink of is Palestinians, millions of them, being driven into the Sinai Desert with help of the US Delta Force,
but Lowkey,
with
Lowkey,
help
let me
of the
jump
British.
In. Let me
This
jump
is
in.
a manufactured, an Israeli-manufactured humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. There is a 23% infant mortality rate in Gaza.
Let me say something. I completely agree with you about the plight of the Palestinian people. I've tweeted about this for the last 2 weeks.
No, to be fair, you haven't, Piers, and this is not journalism. Shireen Abu Akleh was journalism. Yasser Murtaja was journalism. Mu'taz Azaiza, that's journalism. Palestinians are reaching out from the cage that Israel has put them in, and they are trying to speak to the world. And they are being met with cold indifference. And I would say to you, Piers, I would say to you that gentleman that you've just had on the show, Mark Regev, he belongs in The Hague. David Petraeus, you know, Piers, you made your reputation as opposing the invasion of Iraq. Well, I would ask you, journalist to journalist, how could you justify the interview you just gave to the head of US forces in that illegal occupation of Iraq that David Petraeus led? He was then the head of the CIA. Both of the individuals that you have just had on this show deserve to be in The Hague, tried for war crimes. I am not anything like them. I have not hurt a fly. Those two men have. Why are they given the respectability that you gave them with your interview? And why am I interrogated as if I am somehow someone that could hurt a human being?
Well, certainly in Mark Regev's case, I pushed him hard on all the positions Israel is currently adopting.
That wasn't hard.
Let me explain, because I did a tweet today, and I meant every word of this. I said, I have great respect for anybody who in the immediate aftermath of this appalling terror attack said it was outrageous and appalling.
There are 1,500 Palestinians still under the rubble in Gaza.
Exactly. You've had your say.
They're still under the rubble, Piers. They're still under the rubble. You're not bringing them up with that.
I said those whose instinctive reaction was not to feel that, and I think you're one of them, because your reaction was to say the arrogance to think you could keep 2 million people trapped in an open-air prison indefinitely, as if somehow that justified what happened that day.
Piers,
it didn't justify what happened that day.
You know exactly what you're doing.
And you should be able...
The point when that tweet was sent, you had not seen anything had happened.
You've had your criticism of me, and that's fine. You're perfectly entitled to it. Like I said to you, or you said about me, I believe in free speech. You're entitled to your opinion of me, of David Petraeus, of Mark Regev. But I'm also entitled to judge you as somebody who did not find it in themselves to express anything involving any outrage or any...
I've just expressed it. And Piers, this is not journalism. The idea of us comparing our moral compasses and somehow I have a deficient moral compass. Somehow I am a moral monster. You know what's true? You know what's true is I am not. The people that have shown a cold indifference to the ethnically cleansed Palestinians, dispossessed, 1 in 3 every refugee in the world is Palestinian. They are the largest refugee population. Those who have turned a blind eye to their suffering are those that need to be seriously interrogated about their moral compass. And I would ask you before we end the show, I would ask you that I am able to read out the names of the 20 Palestinian journalists that have been killed in Gaza.
Because I have 2 more guests.
So you're censoring me.
8 minutes for them. We have 4 left.
It's 20 journalists. So I'm being censored now. And I'll tell you something else.
You're not being censored. This badge,
zoom in on this badge. This badge was given to me by an employee of this building who said they were told they could not wear this badge because it was the Palestinian flag. You talk about uncensored. This is censored. This badge was banned from an employee in this building.
I have told nobody they can or can't wear a badge. So that's a ridiculous thing to say. I'm in New York. But good to see you, Lowkey. I appreciate you coming on the